My name is Keith Moen. I'm the Executive Director of the NSBA, Saskatoon's Business Association, and it's my pleasure and honor to welcome a dear old friend and acquaintance, business associate, Mr. Albert Jamie. Albert is the Director of Strategy with Zoo, and Albert has been a long-time employee of Zoo, and in fact, I was teasing him on social media in terms of calling him an ageless wonder. He looks like he's about 13 years old, but that's actually not the case. He's well, I won't disclose how old he is. That's probably a well-kept secret, but he's the big 4-0. Isn't that crazy? Looks like he's okay. I'll give you 18. You look like you're 18, Albert.
Thanks.
In any event, enough kidding around. Albert's got a lot of tremendous knowledge and insight with regards to digital strategy and marketing and just creative thinking and business expertise. And that's what he's here to talk to us about today. And without further ado, so I'll just actually, before I pass it over to you, Albert, I'll just advise those that are logging in that you can ask questions. We'll probably save them until the end after Albert's presentation, because he's got a nice digital presentation that we'll bring forward. But you can ask questions through the Q&A, little bubbles on the bottom. If you scroll your mouse around, you'll see a ribbon pop up through a chat box. And you can, either way, we'll get a hold of us, and certainly we will answer those questions. Well, Albert will anyway. And I am now going to fade to the background and turn it over to Mr. Albert Jamie.
Thank you very much, Keith. So I am broadcasting live from the Zoo office, the experience room here, and I'm just going to basically share a presentation with everybody, if that's okay. And I'm just going to do this, and then we're going to also do a little screen sharing afterwards. So hopefully everybody is seeing this. Yeah, it says I'm sharing. That's good. I'm going to hit push play, and I do have my CEO, Ryan, and it looks like everything's good to go. Okay, so Keith said that I'm going to do a little bit of a talk, and I think Keith kind of put out that I was going to talk a little bit about doing some tech tips on working remotely, and I'm going to do that for sure, but I think you guys will appreciate the talk today just because it's really timely, and I know that there's a lot of technical talks happening on these webinars, but I feel like today maybe might be a little bit of a motivational kind of reflective talk on business and maybe process, maybe giving you guys some ideas on new processes that you want to try within your organization. And, you know, it's really timely about innovation and being nimble. So it's all about designing for the future, because a lot of people have questions. Quickly, just about me, as Keith said, I'm a partner and director of strategy at Zoo, and I've been here for about 18 years, and I've been kind of leading the consulting side, which leads right into the design side and development side. So definitely seen the internet go from something that was very small to something that is basically completely controlling our lives, it seems. So we've definitely kind of grown from where we started. And if you've never heard of Zoo, we are located in just the edge of downtown right there. And how we like to describe ourselves as being a product and services firm consultancy that focuses on digital. And really that's kind of how we've been describing ourselves for the last 5 to 10 years. But we were very much like what people think, a very small consultancy that was based upon web design a long time ago. And that's exactly what we've evolved from. If you look at us today, we're a cast of about 35 full-time people, designers, strategists, and developers that all work under one roof in this building on Pacific Avenue. And if you're ever bored and want to take a spin when we get out of this isolation and kind of observe how things are done just in a kind of team atmosphere, let us know. Again, I'm in this room right here, which is our kind of giant workshop room where we do a lot of training and a lot of planning and a lot of design thinking workshops, as you can see. More importantly, this is kind of the stuff that we've been producing for the last 25 years, really like large scale, lots of user experience design layered on top of, complex backends that, integrate into big enterprise systems, blah, blah, blah. This is essentially what we work towards. But since 95, we've been really big on the human advocacy on human-centered design, making sure that the things that we design, services or products, are always designed around the users. So as you can imagine, very much like any sort of IT solutions or software development firm, we have departments that are set up very similar. We have a strategic side that really does a lot of the planning, moves right in and works with design, which then also works right with technology, and which is all the developers, which is funny because the majority of us are developers, not me, but at Zoo are the development arm of the company. Anyways, that's kind of the picture of what our company looks like, today, maybe yesterday. And that's kind of the talk I wanted to give, is that, we're really in this kind of interesting time. And I keep thinking that this is what everybody I'm talking to kind of feels like. We're just reflecting on what's happening. And if you're like me, you're going through some real existential kind of thinking and discussions with yourself. And it's not just about business. We're just, I think, scraping the surface of how this world is about to change. And I know that we've changed in the last 20 years quite a bit, but I think the world's going to change quite a bit more, and demand's going to change, business is going to change, but even personal lives are going to change. I just having a lot more like personal reflective talks with friends and talking about what does it all matter, like how delicate we've seen how life is and how short we have on this planet. A lot of people are having the chance to maybe hit the reset button just in general. And whether it's in work, your job, or just in life, in purpose, I think this is a really important time, and it's going to be an important juncture that we look back on of this sort of pause that we had worldwide. It's really interesting to think that in Saskatchewan especially, we largely don't take part in many big world scale events, whether it's terrorism, hurricanes, typhoons, or anything like that. We're shielded from a lot of it. And this is our first time that I can imagine that we've been a part of a worldwide event. And it's really kind of interesting, and it's deeply affected a lot of people that I know. So, but if you're in business, again, like a lot of us are kind of like thinking and going, yeah, we're not invincible. Like everybody is kind of suffering right now. And there's not many people who are like this. Unfortunately, there's only a few companies that are really, making it large from this pandemic. And unfortunately, most of us are, considering everything. Everything's on the table for a lot of businesses, of not just business model, but even processes. This is a time to, challenge conventional thinking. And this is what the talk's going to be about today, because I've been saying like design thinking more than ever right now. And we're going to talk a lot about design thinking as a sort of methodology and process to solve problems quickly. And I know that this is maybe top of mind for a lot of organizations who want to slingshot themselves out of this isolation. But before I go into it, I really want to talk about like how we got to this. Yesterday, I did a 4-hour workshop on the steps of design thinking. And today we're going to just kind of breeze through it. So you just have a general understanding of like this term that you might have heard, and maybe how it applies to your like new way of thinking. But how I like to start it is basically talking about this kind of digital transformation that's happening. But it's really not even just digital, really, it's just transformation. If you're like me and you've been paying attention to a lot of organizations, you'll notice that people are doing massive projects, whether it's CRM, ERPs, or just massive legacy mainframe stuff. Everybody's trying to create these amazing new experiences, but are really realizing that they can only do that if their backends can adapt to it. So this is kind of the thing that's spurring it, and also the pressure that's mounting from all this disruptive technology that's happening from Silicon Valley. Because looking back at this last 10 years, we understand what happened, and it seemingly felt overnight that we had, basic mobile websites to these huge experiences within apps that have just taken us away from desktop and larger screens down to these mobile devices. Because we all remember what the internet looked like when it started, right? It was largely something like this. It was more of a novelty, and the experiences that we designed were just really one way, right? They were websites that were like this. Everybody's familiar with something like this. But something happened maybe around 2005, 2006, where all of a sudden, the internet got faster, mobile devices became easier to use, and everybody started developing these amazing experiences, and the money rolled in. because they started disrupting other organizations. And us as humans, we didn't understand that what we were seeing and using every day were like billion-dollar pieces of software. And because of that, it made power users of everybody. And it taught us how to use like complex software because they were easily designed. And it turned out that it changed society. It changed the way we behaved, and it changed the expectation of users and your customers. And it put mounting pressure on business just to understand this. Compounding this pressure is the continual advancement of technology, like all the different things from Internet of Things to the wearables to connectivity everywhere. We're starting to see disruption happen and innovation more than ever. And this stuff came for our industry as well. We're, graphic designers traditionally and traditionally trained, but at the same time, if you look at what's happening in this industry, everything's going to voice eventually. And are we going to have to reposition and retrain and elevate our experienced team to design for voice, which then takes in a whole different type of user experience? But we still are designers, right? We're still designing how to get a pair of khakis delivered from a database using voice. That hasn't changed, but we're going to be studying more human psychology, ethnography, gestures, things like that, and language. So nobody's really safe from what's happening here. Speaking of nobody's safe, I don't keep like beating a dead horse, but I love looking back and thinking back to these cautionary tales that we've seen. And everybody's familiar with like what happened with Blockbuster and Netflix. And people know that Blockbuster they had the opportunity to buy Netflix for $50 million, and they kind of laughed them out of the boardroom. And again, the rest is history. Everybody understands what happened. And Netflix obviously just killed that industry, but they're now gunning for, the creator industry. So like Sony, the RCA's of 20th Century Fox, and they're winning that war. They're starting to win Oscars and Emmys. And so they're redefining this whole category and industry as we know it. And another popular one was the incumbent of Sears, the downfall that we all know. And we experienced this one firsthand, obviously, because, it was a mainstay in our malls. But the thing that bothers me about Sears is, I keep saying it, they had a 130-year head start on the entire catalog order system. They built this infrastructure that was probably the hardest thing to do out of everything, is to create like a warehousing system where you're shipping out semis across North America. But they couldn't beat this online bookstore that came in, and they couldn't connect the dots and said, hey, we need to invest a little bit more than what we're doing. They just kind of rested on their laurels, and this is just a perfect example of an incumbent not taking the disruption seriously. And speaking of disruption, like Amazon, within the last 3-4 years have now become the biggest company and the richest people on the planet. They're a company that's threatening all industries, which is kind of scary to think. Their sights are actually set on space travel. So if you think about Amazon and space travel, I'm probably going to bet on them to figure out a way to deliver, groceries to my doorstep with a drone. And that is, laughable 5 years ago, but very serious now. And so what we're starting to see are more companies coming to us and actually asking, like, what happens if Amazon comes to our industry? Again, a question that nobody would ask 10 years ago, but are asking lately. And it's actually a serious question, and people are scared because it's like, well, yeah, what happens? I don't know. There are a lot of articles, a lot of people, experts talking about what to do, and it kind of resonates and echoes the same thing. Really, it's talking about keeping up with the new digital age or closed doors. And I like this second sentence of keeping up with customer experiences, and creating customer experiences is what matters most. It's really important. A lot of people saying it, but a lot of people not doing it. So looking at examples of companies that have kind of died, it's really important to start thinking about, well, what's an example of a company that has reinvented themselves, has disrupted themselves, and made something out of it? There's not many that I can think of that are actually really doing well, that have been around for a long time. But one organization comes to mind is Domino's. And I was talking about this yesterday, and it made me so hungry that we ordered Domino's for lunch. But they've done an amazing amount of like technology investment. They've essentially rebranded themselves to be a tech company that just happens to serve pizza. And from their crazy omni-channel experience that you can order from anything, all the way to their Domino's tracker. And I'm assuming a lot of people have ordered from Domino's and watched this tracker where you can see somebody making your pizza and it'll tell you when and how long it's going to take. And this is before it kind of, I would say, like the food delivery systems, but even showing you when it's going into the oven has been kind of a surprising and delightful feature. All the way to them realizing that, yeah, let's just deliver pizza to every person wherever they are with no fixed address. Of course, this makes sense, right? That we know where the people exist, so why don't we just deliver to where they are? And they're making it work. So again, huge initiatives, lots of execution in there, but at the same time, Domino's has put that emphasis on it. So we are seeing that with incumbent companies, and we are seeing sort of this innovation mindset in Saskatchewan as well. We're working with a lot of organizations teaming up with their innovation departments. It's kind of rebranded almost R&D bespoke teams that are creating and breaking things within the office. And it's really fun to see, and we're teaming up and building capacity and teaching them how to like be really nimble with their planning. But at the same time, we're also traditionally dealing with organizations who are like this, who maybe don't understand the amount of effort that it's going to take going forward when it comes to being disruptive or changing the culture to be unconventional thinkers. They think that might be more of a line item, and usability is something you can just check off. It isn't, because it's largely misunderstood. And I get it. I totally get why you would misunderstand it. If you're a traditional business person, you walk into something like this and you're aboard the cruise and you just imagine how expensive something like this is. It's huge. It's immense. It takes thousands of people potentially put this together, the amount of engineering and planning. The problem about our industry is it looks largely like this. The experiences are really small, and a lot of people don't truly respect that this is billion-dollar software, and don't understand that the amount of people working on just the Amazon checkout would decimate the amount of people who built that cruise ship. And what happens is it results in sort of this half-baked effort. And again, if you're working in any sort of enterprise, you've probably come across software that looks like this, whether it's your inventory or fleet management or something like this. Or this is hotel software, if you can imagine. This is how you book people and run a hotel on the back end. And it's sad, you probably need huge amounts of change management. You need people to come in and treat this differently than it would be if it was a website. People have to learn how to F8 out of things, and you have probably a giant manual that comes with these. But if you fast forward to what we see today on the external side, which isn't any more complicated, but people think it's less complicated because it's easier to use, people automatically don't think that this effort was the same. That's the complete opposite thinking. We constantly have to say, we must work hard so our users don't have to. If there's one thing I want you guys to take home, is the idea that as designers, and you guys are all designers up there, whether you're a business executive or management, project management, we're leading projects that are going to develop a product, a service, a system, a process for an internal user, an external user. We're designing something. And that's what they did at Airbnb. They put a lot of effort in there so I can run a hotel without any training. They don't have a change management team for the world. They just don't have that department. They have tech support, but for the large part, they put all the training inside as you work. So I will continually keep saying, we must work hard so the users don't have to. And that requires budget, time, resources, expertise. A company that has done very well was Uber. They've worked hard to obviously, make an amazing experience, ethics aside, but they have proven that, this system, because it's easier to use, people are going to go flock to it. If we would have said, what do we want to, how do we want to revolutionize the taxi industry? We would have came up with all the magic that Uber had, which is don't pay through money. How long am I going to be in the car? How long is it going to be until it gets there? How much is it going to be? All those little amazing things that you get from Uber that we take for granted. But all we need is this. We need all this stuff to align, all these pieces of technology. And the cab companies largely ignored this and probably thought, oh yeah, it's a pipe dream. But it happened. One day, all of this stuff became available and somebody put it together. And now the cab companies, I kind of feel sorry for them. We use them and we've used their software, we use their website. We understand it's almost like half baked again. It's you feel bad that they're so far behind on the usability that you don't really know what the future is. And because of that, Uber has really kind of dominated. But in a way that, if you think about it, not so much. They didn't revolutionize the entire trip A to Z. You sit back in an Uber, it largely feels like you're in a cab. So I would say 95% of that time, it hasn't been disrupted. It is fairly the same. But what they did was they actually looked at the beginning and at the end. And they just said there's 15 seconds and 10 seconds at the end that we want to remove that friction of calling and paying and ordering and knowing where your address is. And they did that. And that's what they focused on the entire journey. They looked at it and just said, hey, this is the user's biggest set of friction. Let's focus on that first, and everything will fall afterwards. And they called that kind of the magic moment, really. And I urge you to look at your organization and go, yeah, let's not revolutionize everything. Is there maybe 2 or 3 different areas that we can call our magic moments that we need to focus on and design some innovative solutions? And that's ultimately what I'm here today to talk about, is like, what is that magic moment and how are we going to design to disrupt that? And to do that, we always say, like, it's probably better to start acting like a startup right now. Being more nimble is, not just, sitting on beanbag chairs, but we're talking about the process of being iterative, prototyping your ideas and moving quickly. So not being perfect and launching something every year. It's like every week, every month. So we talk about it being design thinking. And really, this is the approach we take for any sort of project that we have, big or small. So a lot of people are wondering what is design thinking, and some people out there have actually done some reading, and some people might be some experts, and this is just a way to kind of refresh your understanding of the steps. But what we like to say is that it's kind of a mouthful. It's a practical approach to finding creative solutions to problems inspired by traditional design methods that you don't have to be a designer to understand. So for us, basically means it's an approach to problem solving, nothing more than that. We just use it as a framework, a set of steps that we attack every problem with. If you Google it, it looks like this. And there's a lot of different confusing, potentially, diagrams. But the way we like to shorten it and simplify it is to look at those 5 steps, the generally accepted 5 steps of empathizing, defining, ideating, prototyping, testing, doing this kind of loop with it. But we'll simplify it even more, is that it's doing some research, identifying that problem, coming up with some ideas, trying them out, and getting feedback. A lot of people might be going, yeah, that's kind of how we work normally. It's typically the speed that we do it and forcing certain key steps, I would say, other than, like, everybody has their own process on like a special project initiative, but I'll explain further each step so then you guys can fully understand. Design thinking is, lends well to this traditional consulting diagram of double diamond, because we're constantly diverging. You're always going wide at the beginning to look at all the problems, and then you're coming together and forcing yourself to focus on what the key problems are, and then going really, really wide with your solutions, and then eventually coming back together and prototyping something that you, out of all the entire solution, putting some money towards. The process is pretty simple and straightforward. It's a lot of cross-functional teams, bringing in engineers, and here we have some miners who operate a giant piece of machinery, and getting them to talk about their interface, and the engineers who actually develop it, and understanding their mental model, understanding how they use it day to day, that the screen vibrates and they need to take their gloves off to be able to type, understanding what the key features are that they need to be seeing. First and foremost, this is to redesign an interface for their giant piece of machine. And then again, getting them, design thinking is key on pushing people out of their comfort zones, because we're constantly just going to say, instead of just describing it, just draw it quickly. Like, do you want it to look like a bin, a gauge, a dial? And then from there, we can understand their mental models after they voted down and said, this is how we would like to look at information going forward. So that's a really kind of typical way that design thinking looks, especially the workshops that we run. But let's go through each step really, really fast. First is doing some research. So the big thing is user research. We always ask, what about the user? We've all been in this kind of on hold for 30 minutes just to hear somebody say your call is very important to us. And this is very representative of what I think that a lot of businesses are doing. It's like, despite how often it's said, a lot of companies don't really know what it means to be customer focused, even though they constantly use things like this. It's like customer satisfaction, #1. Yeah, this is the type of stuff that kind of just grinds my gears, because everybody's saying it, but not many people have a process in place. And so research is the first step for us, is researching the users. And we always say that if you have 4 steps of research, especially in user research, that I like to stick to, is one is about them. If you don't have a big budget, just Google, do some research, look at stats, anything around them or about them. Then you can talk to people around them. So the people who are on the front lines, and just saying, what do our users want? How do you know, what do you know about the users that would help us design a product? Going a step further is obviously going to the user, doing some user tests, user interviews. And then finally is being them, putting yourself in that position, going through the process as a user or as a customer. A lot of companies just don't do that and understand, oh, wow, you can really feel firsthand the frustration that they would have. So a lot of different user engagement methods in this research side, from data, surveys, focus groups, card sorting, observation. The bottom line is a little bit less clear, but intercepts is when you would go and talk to somebody, interview them as they're in the process. So talk to somebody who just checked into a hotel, because their memory is fresh and they can talk specifically. Sometimes you're interviewing people about something that happened 2 months ago and you're not getting as clean data. Diarizing, getting people tools so they can give you their diary every day for the experience. The Safari is being them, going through, doing the shopping, doing the process, and understanding. Obviously, there's user testing and interviewing. So these are just like a snippet of things you could be doing, but this is all user engagement research. Again, in this process as well, we do persona creation, and not going to talk too much about it, but for us, personas are kind of fictional representations of the users. And we purposely, only pick, 4 to 6 of them per project, making sure that we focus on very specific types of users. And we always say, if you design for everybody, you design for nobody. So it's going to take a lot of constraint or restraint for you to not say, we have 20 different types of users. There are only a few types that you really need to optimize for if you really get forced to think about it. Then during the research process as well, like after we've looked at some personas, we'll go and map their journey. And we'll do this with the client. Sometimes we'll do this with the customer, and really understand all the phases, understand their emotions and thoughts as they go through it, and understand the highs and lows, and help identify those opportunities and pain points. So we'll do this with our clients, we'll do this with the users, and eventually create some sort of artifact that we can represent and present to the organization, saying, this is maybe where our magic moment should be. So again, okay, that's some research. Let's just blast through the other steps. Identifying insights, that's really coming together and defining the problem. Design thinking is really huge about making sure we're designing what needs to be designed, and making sure we look at the problem in different ways. We like to do a lot of things called reframing the problem. So taking a look at a problem and looking at it from a different angle. A lot of people have heard this analogy of the slow elevator, and sometimes it's very obvious, right? The elevator is too slow. So the obvious solution space would be, well, how do you make it faster? Yeah, that's an easy kind of way to look at it, but we'll maybe stop and go, okay, well, let's look at that problem from a different angle. Is there a way we can reframe it? So maybe we'll look at it as from the weight. Well, the weight, that's kind of the symptom, right? It's like the weight is annoying. And so for us, then we have to ask a whole different set of questions, like, how do we make it feel shorter? That's a lot different than making the elevator faster. And a solution actually might be to put mirrors in the elevator. And research has shown that people love looking at themselves. And maybe the elevator ride is now too fast because people are so vain. But that's a way to show a creative solution because you reframed a problem. So we'll do that. During the insights, we'll take all the notes from research, the interviews, and we'll get together with the team. And this is a fairly straightforward thing. Everybody's had these sort of meetings where you affinity map all your ideas, but we'll do it with Post-it notes, and we'll kind of gather them together, group them, and make sure that we're seeing the same thing. And then we'll vote down the right idea or the right challenge that everybody thinks we need to put our attention to. And this is where you have to make some tough decisions, because there's going to be a lot of problems. But then as a group, you need to start thinking which are the problems that we need to solve first. And that again goes back to that double diamond. And once you kind of have this problem or this challenge, then you can start reframing it. And design thinking is really famous for introducing the idea of how might we statements. And we use to reframe problems, we use the how might we statements. If you look at the problem, the solution diagram, the how might we really is in this nice sweet spot in the middle where before you need to go out and come up with a lot of ideas, just take some time to reframe your problem with these how might we statements. Simply, every problem is an opportunity for design, right? By framing your challenge as a how might we question, you'll set yourself up for an innovative solution, says the folks at IDEO.org. And this is true. And there's an art to it. Again, when we run workshops and training, we'll spend a morning on developing the perfect way to create how might we statements. But this is just a quick way to look at it. So pretend that we're a consultancy and we're doing something for a restaurant, and we found out that through research that ice cream sales are down at the drive-thru, not in the restaurant, but at the drive-thru, and that research has told us from interviewing that people find it just too messy on the go. Okay, so this is a way to kind of reframe it. And there's ways to make it too narrow and too broad. If you go too narrow on a how might we, you're going to be kind of implying a solution. So something too narrow would be how might we create a cone to eat with ice cream without dripping? Again, too narrow because you're going to have too little solutions because it implies that the cone is the problem. Something that's too broad would be how might we redesign dessert? Then you're entering the world of cakes, cookies, and candy bars. And so again, your answers are going to just be too wide. But something that might be just right for that problem might be how might we redesign ice cream to be more portable? And that's just that perfect center area where you're going to get just enough ideas, and it gets you also excited to start answering. Because you might be talking about the cone, the box, the car, and maybe even figuring out a new type of ice cream that doesn't melt as fast. So that was really identifying the insights. And once you have that and your problem statement, you're ready to start coming up with ideas. And this is really opening up wider to the solutions and coming up with a lot of different ideas. And again, this is brainstorming essentially. And there's so many different ideas and ways to brainstorm. Everybody's been a part of it. We like doing a few certain activities. We love sketching. And so we run sketching classes before just to get people comfortable on sketching, and getting large groups of people who don't normally sketch is kind of something I really get excited about, because they start realizing that, yeah, it is easier to understand somebody's sketch than them talking about something of a table or some sort of experience. And so one thing that we actually do is called Crazy Eights, which is borrowed from the Google Design Sprint book. It's a very effective thing, and it's 8 ideas in 8 minutes, 1 minute per. So you take one how might we statement and you go, okay, we're going to play 8 songs for 1 minute each, and you have to come up with an idea for that it's different from the other one. It's not a screen flow, or it's not a flow. It could be offline or online, but it's basically this activity that everybody works very quietly coming up with ideas. And this is just a springboard to start talking and sharing ideas with your group. And it doesn't have to be anything more than something like this. So for brainstorming, again, lots of activities, but that's just what we like to use. Then once we start sharing those ideas, we have to kind of vote them down and start combining them into what we think are some solutions that we need to prototype, and prototyping to the next stage so people can test it. And people sometimes are mistaken with the whole idea of prototyping, that it has to be like this, like some sort of robot. But really, a prototype to us in our industry is just a simple prototype that any person can actually look at and respond to. So nothing more than that. And again, they could be higher fidelity sketches. They could be, boxes and arrows just for some sort of table. And it could be an interface that takes maybe 1 or 2 days to design, not weeks or months. Something that after a little workshop, a designer and a developer maybe can go back and start creating an interface for. Again, these are more digital projects. But you could also do something like this, where we're trying to redesign the first day of work and realizing that people are confused. So, on your first day at work, well, why don't we send you an email before, and let's prototype this email and this letter that you'll get, so you'll have a really clear understanding what your desk looks like, what your team looks like, a solution that a lot of organizations probably could use. But we just prototype this idea. Or they could be physical prototypes, like wearables and walking around and understanding the context of what you would need when. This is just an example of a prototype we created. It was a Google Glass meets Tinder, where you can shake your head or blink twice, yes or no kind of thing when you're in a bar. Obviously it didn't fly. And then you can also prototype a process. So prototyping a new flow for a store and understanding, do people understand where the pickup window is and how is this going to affect busy times? So again, prototyping can take so many different faces. It's really up to you, as long as somebody can give you feedback. And that's really important, is getting that feedback and scheduling that user testing, making sure you're bringing those users in and asking them the critical questions of, would you use this? How would you improve this? You can do it remotely if you want and get people to click through and have the team observe. Going back to that mining project, we created almost like a video game station because they wanted to run this giant machine remotely, so then they can take a look at it. And we just, obviously you can see it's not very, very low tech, but they can look at the screens and understand, does this have to be tactile? Does this have to be touch screen? Where would you want your coffee? What would get in the way? All that stuff is part of a good design. And then you do rounds of it. You can do several rounds of prototyping where they can look at something a little bit more high fidelity, but still something that's cheap and quick that takes maybe a week to put together. And then finally bringing them in and getting them to actually use the thing and observe them. So this is classic user testing, and it's part of, you could do this from Monday and by Friday have everything that I just talked about. So that's that whole breaking conventional thinking. And if you're working in an organization that just seems to be spinning their tires, this is what I really urge you to do, is try to look at doing something more iterative and prototypey, I guess that's a word. So that's the whole process there. With design thinking, I urge you guys to try it, because it will stop you from spinning and it'll help you start delivering quicker. It'll help you design experiences around your customers. You'll find that you're going to get better teamwork, and people are going to be agreeing on things a lot quicker because you're forcing them to vote ideas down, and there's a lot more clarity. It'll help you solve bigger problems, and you'll chunk them out into very specific things rather than thinking you have to boil the ocean. And it's going to change that siloed culture. I guarantee that, because it's something that it forces you to bring in people from different departments that normally don't work with each other. And again, going forward, this is maybe just an opportunity for you guys to future-proof your organization with a new set and a new project, a new type of process. So that's a quick look at the way that we run our projects. But because of this whole COVID thing, we've been switching quickly to running these programs remotely. And you can imagine how involved our meetings are. They're all about drawing and sketching. And in this experience room, it's all whiteboards. And so the fact that we're not allowed to group in here, we had to find a quick solution. And we've been running these workshops with clients using a software called Mural. And I'm just going to demo this and introduce to you guys this product really, really quickly. We're not reps of it. We're just using it. And I really, really enjoy it. And I'll just show you really quickly. Click back into my presentation. Exit. Screen share. So I have with me my team, a few other people who are coming on, and I have Rebecca and Chelsea. And so this is essentially the Mural board. And here's all your menu items. It's pretty simple. And this is virtually our whiteboard. So what we like to do is, for example, do a retro. And so we have Chelsea, Zach, and Rebecca. And so maybe I'll zoom in to this one area, and it's called Albert's presentation retro. And so maybe all of us are going to start talking about what the positives of my presentation and my negatives are, and the questions and going forwards are. So simply people are just going to be double clicking and saying, it was great. And I can zoom in even further. And at the same time, we're all working together. Oh yeah, people are complimenting, they really like the slide deck. Oh, that's really good. And you can kind of see. I can also just say I want to follow Zach and just let my hands go and then just kind of watch what Zach's doing. And then I can also follow Rebecca, see what she's doing. They're all kind of zoomed out as well. Oh, look, the negative. Al grinds her gears. Okay. Some slides transitions were jerky over Zoom. So you can kind of see how this essentially would be used. Okay, Rebecca and Chelsea emphasize mindset over process. Okay, thank you, Chelsea. we'll have a talk about that later. Oh yeah, and Rebecca wants to install a mirror. So you can kind of see how this works. You can group them easily, and I can tell you move it down here. We can even draw a few things if we want to and just emphasize it. This is typical screen sharing stuff. But for example, some people might want to do a business model canvas. So we're on this business model canvas and say we want to add some photos into it. Yeah, it's really, really simple. I can actually zoom out. Oh, I got to go say I'm done drawing, right? And then we can actually add photos in here. So we'll say David Hassel. I wonder if David Hassel has photo. Oh yeah, let's put that in there. So key partner. Oh, sometimes the photos don't show up. But a key partner for us is David Hasselhoff. I doubt Keith Milne would show up. I don't even want to show that. What if there's a photo of Keith in his underwear? So yeah, you can fill this out as a group. Also, there's so many different templates on here. So the plane map, what gives us power, you can double click anything here. But I wanted to show something down here. Is like you can create your own like area called Crazy Eights. So pretend we did the Crazy Eights thing. And now I said, okay, everybody draw something at home. And let's do that activity, 8 minutes. Now take a picture and upload it so we can all see it and share it. So everybody can go in and we can expand them. And so Rebecca did her drawing, Chelsea did her drawing, and there we go. And everybody's been putting some ideas in here, and Zach's putting in his drawing. Okay, so then we can take a look and we can zoom in and go, oh, okay, so what are you doing here, Chelsea? Oh, that's a really good idea. And let's look at Rebecca's. Oh, those are good ideas as well. You can do this with anything. Everybody has a camera and everybody can do this. But one thing is really cool is you can set time. So I can set a timer to like 2 minutes, and then we can actually do a vote. So let's start a voting session. I'll give everybody 3 dots or 4 dots, and we can vote on whose idea we want to go forward with. So we just have to click any of these things to vote. So I'm going to vote on here, I'm going to vote on here, and vote on here, vote on here. And everybody's clicking, and eventually it'll show you what the results are, and everybody's hopefully voting quickly. It actually can show you how many votes left. There we go. So then I can end voting, and it'll show you, oh, look at that. Chelsea's won first place. She got 7 votes, and it'll show you nicely in this diagram in the back here. So again, this is just a quick look at what this could do, but you don't have to use this. There's Miro, M-I-R-O, and Mural as well. But yeah, Mural, interesting little application that we've been able to use, and it actually is quite powerful. Yeah, I'm just gonna go quickly back to my presentation and close it out for you guys, because I know everybody's really excited to get to go eat lunch. So let me just see, where did my presentation go? There we go. So, design thinking. We apply to everything: products, services, change management, innovation, corporate vision, you name it. I kind of feel like it's a challenge. It's like you come to us and we'll show you how you can apply it. What I've shown you is just more of a set of ingredients. It's not necessarily a recipe. It's more just here's some steps to take a look at. If you're looking for more regimented sort of recipe of design thinking, I urge you guys to read this book. It's the Design Sprint, and it was created by Jake Knapp, who worked at Google at the time and talked about how they use this at Google. And it is like a major part of Google. They have the Sprint Academy pretty much built in Google now, so you can go in and learn how to do this quick process. And it's a really regimented, scheduled set of 4 to 5 days where you map, sketch, decide, prototype, and test. But it's like half an hour of this, 20 minutes of this, 30 minutes of this. And it really forces you to be quick. And it's been really effective on coming up with different innovation. Another resource or set of resources are these brands: Nielsen Norman, Human Factors, Google Ventures, Audio, AJ Smart, all different consultancies that are really, really good, and ones that we've kind of trained under to kind of develop our own mix of what design thinking is. And they're all amazing and all have a lot of different resources. As do we. We have a blog that we talk about design thinking, we talk about development, we talk about a lot of different things if you're really interested, so I urge you to go to that. And again, if you liked what you saw here and it's really, really quick, but wanted to take maybe a slower approach, we're just launching the Zoo Academy, which is going to be remote. And once we get back to work, still part of this experience room. So it'll be in person as well, where we offer like a 4-hour design thinking fundamentals, when you get like a certificate as well when you're done. But we're also offering the 3-day and a 5-day. So a lot more immersive foundational experience where we go through long case studies. We go through every single activity, teach you how to run them. And then the 5-day one is basically the same as the 3-day, but we tack on 2 immersive intensive days on design sprint. So we actually go through that very specific recipe we're talking about. And also talk about facilitator training. So if you wanted to do this within your own organization. So yeah, and I think that these are all going to be available through the Canada Job Skills Grants. So it's going to be able to give you 50% of your cost back. So it's pretty going to be a really good course. I think we've been doing it internally for a lot of organizations, but we're pretty soon going to start opening it up. Okay, man, these remote workshops and webinars are tricky. You don't know if anybody was actually listening. Was I just talking to my colleagues? But I just hope somebody was on the other end. If you want to get a hold of me, you have any questions, definitely you can find me on any social channel. You can just email me at a@zoo.com. I'm around, have no plans on leaving the house anytime soon. Okay. We are now at the questions thing. Keith, did everybody just zone out and go for lunch, or?
No, not yet. Excuse me. That was a great presentation, Albert. Thank you very much. And that typically happens actually with such a well orchestrated and thought out and well explained presentation, is that the questions are minimal. We did have one come in while you were chatting in terms of the different phases, the 5 different phases you're referencing. And Fatima was wondering if it's possible for the phases to have overlap, or if it's best to finish one phase and to move on to the next one. So mostly for the last 2 phases. She's asking because, as you mentioned, it takes less time to change things before the implementation, but not after that.
So she's specifically asking about the last 2 phases, like prototyping and testing. Do they have overlap? I've seen it. Like, definitely people it depends on how big of a team you're working on, but like the whole idea of prototyping is that you get it to a point where it's good enough to show. And if you're like demoing something, sometimes you just have to show it, and just, if you're working in good partnership with people, you can just say, like, this is kind of half baked, don't pay attention to the photos and certain things. And so you try to focus on finishing that phase, like finishing the prototype and then doing the testing. But definitely I've seen it where we're testing something and then quickly notice something that we're actually still like working on the prototype as the next person's coming in. So like you're kind of just perfecting it as it goes. Again, it's just a set of ingredients, and every project I would say is different. Sometimes we have this short of a research phase because they have nothing and they have no budget. So we just literally have to make a lot of assumptions then going forward. But it kind of protects you a little bit, because even when you test, then on the back end, you're able to test those assumptions. So the bigger the assumptions, the more important testing is. If you don't do any of that, no research, no assumptions, and we've launched software 10 years ago that we didn't have the chance to test or to do the research. And I'll tell you, man, it makes a huge difference. Like, you're talking about like major costs down the line that you're going to have to suffer. And we keep saying, easier to use an eraser than a sledgehammer, right?
Yeah, for sure. Well, that's a pretty good prelude into the next question here. Brian's asking, well, firstly, he says, great presentation. And all I find, the design thinking sprint works really well in those allocated 5 days, but then we get bogged down in the weeks and months after that when it comes to the implementation. What's your best piece of advice to keep the momentum from the sprint going when it comes to implementing?
Well, there's a lot of different types of sprints. And so it all depends and you can Google the different styles. There's like a vision sprint. And there's like a brand sprint. And people are starting to use the word sprint like really loosely, but there's like vision sprint, brand sprint, feature sprint, product sprint. So a product sprint would be like a very high level view of like this kind of new idea and this new product. But sometimes you are just sprinting on one like feature. So it's important to understand what you're trying to do. And we have like a nice little criteria sheet to say, are you ready for a sprint? Because a lot of times it's mostly about, are you ready? And the big question isn't about the team or anything, it's about afterwards. And we're working with clients that are, the feedback has been the same. Is like, yeah, we really stumble when it comes to execution. a lot of times the big question we ask at the beginning is like, okay, what resources do you have in place? What are the possible risks we could run into afterwards? And a lot of times we've been working with these companies and they end up, it's a seconded team to do the sprints. But as soon as we're done and people at the end are going, man, this is a great idea. We need this product right now. And then everybody in the room looks at each other and goes, yeah, but I got to go back to my regular job. I got seconded to do this thing. And then what we see is all of a sudden it takes months before they go, oh, what was that feature that we kind of came up with? That's not the way to do it. And typically, if you're working internally, the team that's about to build it, this is just part of their planning. This isn't like a special thing. It's like, no, the team is isolated and then they go and take it. So, or else you have a good partner. And that's the thing is like, we should have just volunteered ourselves to say, okay, you client, you guys are all working on something else. We should just build the prototype for you and then start doing the testing for you. It would have saved them a lot more money, but they would have had to, hire a consulting firm to take it on. But like, it's expensive to get a lot of people in that room. Like we'd have 10 people that are all like high price managers for an entire week that they don't do anything else. Like you have to invest in the next phase.
Yeah, that makes sense. I got an anonymous question here. What software does Zoo use to work from home better? Is it Zoom? And what else? If you do use anything else?
Well, so right now, the things that we use the most we're using Slack, and we were pretty much ready to go the next day. It was more about just like how many people wanted their chairs and their monitors. But as for working remotely, we use Slack quite a bit at our office for communication. So it has built-in like video conferencing, video screen sharing. For bigger meetings, we've been using Google Meet, which it's pretty handy. And it's still funny when we send clients or other people, they kind of giggle at us for using Google Meet, but it has proven to be more secure than Zoom. Zoom has different features. We use Zoom, like we're using Zoom here. I was using Zoom yesterday. Zoom has like the hands up feature where you got to get a Chrome extension to do that for Google Meet. So there's advantages to every single one. But I've been using Microsoft Teams for other clients. It's really the screen sharing, that stuff. I think everybody has their one that they're trusting with. I urge everybody to like download all of them, so then you can meet with any sort of client or any company, so they work good. But for collaboration, we're using Mural for that sort of stuff. Mostly the designers, and I think we're going to start using it as an executive right away. But there is a competitor to it called Miro. And we're about to look into that as well because it has conferencing built in. That's the one thing that Mural doesn't have is like conferencing built in. So you kind of have to jump between a few windows. But man, yeah, we've used a lot of different things from Zendesk to like, what do we use? Jira for card and task management, but now we're actually using GitHub for task management. So, but yeah, that's typically the suite of software. We didn't have to get too fancy with it, but I know that the digital whiteboard stuff was really important to us because we sketch so much as a company.
Mm-hmm. And is cost a factor there?
For Mural?
For any of them, like in terms of the decision making around the platforms and
they're built so then they're only a few $100s. They're not like, we're not talking like, not just like Oracle or Microsoft or any of those guys. Those guys are like hundreds of thousands of dollars to get suites in enterprise thing. The Mural's like any of this new software, they're built on like volume. So they just want to get like a lot of companies using it for paying like $300 a year kind of thing. So none of these things are too expensive.
For sure.
We can afford it, so it's not.
Yeah. Okay. A couple more questions come in. So in terms of, again, compliments on the presentation, Albert, if there's an ability to present this to someone's team and further training if possible, if they can get a copy of the presentation and I'm sure the recording is going to be available by Zoo. It's also going to be available on the NSBA website as well. So but in terms of the presentation itself, is that something that is proprietary or? Yeah,
they can, the presentation is probably proprietary, but we can definitely like just get a hold of us and we can kind of see how we can organize it. And like anytime we present this, people are like, oh, I need like my whole office to hear about this because design thinking, we've always said it takes more than 3 people from a company and it takes more than about 3 times to hear it before it starts to click. And with our clients, like we've worked with clients for like 10 years and it took like years before they were kind of like, oh, what's that process? Maybe we should do it in our office. We're like, yeah, it's something that I always think it's 3 times, but then you need some serious leadership who can make some decisions, who want to try something different, because it's really tough to implement all of this when you don't have belief from above. So,
Yep.
But yeah, a@zoo.com, we can start the conversation there for sure.
Perfect. Okay. And one, maybe we should wrap this up soon here, Albert. It's 5 minutes to go. What factors should employees consider if considering moving to working remotely?
Oh yeah, you know what, we were supposed to do a talk from our people's and operations manager, and that's more on their end. And I've watched us move really seamlessly to working remotely, and something like what we've done is just, the first thing is, like, we've built what I think was a really, really strong culture. And so when we went remotely, like, the biggest questions and from an executive's mind is like, are people responsible? Will we feel like a team? Can we still get the same amount of quality? And so, like, all those things have been discussed with our team to make sure that we're doing it. And so the computers, obviously there's a lot of technical things you need to consider. If somebody, like, the power goes out, a power went out in one of my workshops and I had to, like, run to the office. So little things like that are really important. But man, from a cultural perspective, that's more important, is making sure that you have people checking in. We have, like, HR people just popping in. Ryan, like, tries to talk to 2 different employees for, like, half an hour every week. We've done some pretty crazy fun things where creating culture and making sure the zoo culture is the same. We actually had birthdays, like the zoo birthdays we usually celebrate. And so we had one of our admin people drive a single prepackaged cupcake that's branded from Zoo to every single house of every employee and drop it on their doorstep so we could, at 3:00, sing happy birthday to everybody and enjoy it. And so we had them drive to Dalmany to drop 1 cupcake off. And we had to phone the subway in Bigger to deliver cookies to the person in Bigger who is stuck at home. So, like, we go to pretty great lengths to try to create that, just to make sure that at Zoo, you know, we're a quirky culture, and we want to make sure that, okay, how might we make and continue our quirky culture digitally? And we're doing staff surveys. We did a staff survey after 2 weeks just to understand, like, how can we improve it? So constant communication, transparency, and I'm really, really proud to see, like, how much people bought into this remote working. Almost too much, in the sense that if we have to get called back to go to work, I think, like Ryan said, like, work's going to be different. Like, people are going to start demanding to do this, and we're going to have to figure out how to make this balance. But it's shown that we're actually quite productive doing this. So.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's good, because you answered the question, because they're also asking in terms of, you know, moving forward into the new normal, you know, what factors or decision-making criteria should people be applying if and when they decide, you know, to bring people back, or rather to keep them working remotely. So that's,
yeah, and Ryan and I were just having this discussion right now about just gradually making it optional, potentially. And again, at the beginning of my presentation, everything's on the table. Like, nobody has the rule book for this. There's not like a pandemic rule book, unless you're Wimbledon, who bought all that insurance. They saw it coming somehow. But, like, for us, we're just flying by the seat of our pants to try to make it work. And we're just going by what we think the employees want, and listening to them, and making sure that we're designing the system for the employee experience around them. And, you know, not everything is always in line, but I keep saying, like, talk to your employees. Like, we have the luxury of only having 35. I don't know what it feels like to be, you know, setting policy for a company with 1,000 people. You kind of just black and white, it's on or off. But for us, we probably have a little luxury of being a little bit more forgiving in certain areas. So it's hard to apply everything to every company. Yeah.
Okay. Within 2 minutes, can you tell me how a local company would be able to apply some of this disruptive technology and information that you say is like the Googles and so on of the world, the Ubers that have been able to take over the world? How can that be applied at a local level?
Well, I would say the first thing to do is to start opening up conversation with your users and understanding who they are. Just try it once, try to prototype something quickly where you don't get too perfect with it, and then you test it and just say, you know what, in a week, let's just try something with our clients, even a drawing, and just saying, hey, we're thinking of doing this service. We're thinking about doing this product. We're thinking about doing this payment plan. What do you think about it? You know, sometimes you just have that conversation over supper, but if you end up just having a little bit of time to kind of map out some of the key features of it, there's so many ways to prototype it. If you do the 4-hour session with us, we do this thing called toilet marketing, where it's this like a really quick prototype that you can just write the features, the benefits, a photo of it, and then show it to somebody and get some feedback and just see how rewarding that is to understand, like, okay, now that we know this, what are we going to change going forward? So just really urging companies to like understand what customer experiences are and how to design for them. That's, if anything, again, that's the basis of this whole talk.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Albert, I can hardly believe it's been an hour that's flown by. I just want to thank you. And before closing off formally, I just will throw it back to you. Do you have any closing comments or something you want to just close off?
Oh, yeah, I was just saying, yeah, again, this is like, it's strange times for everybody. And, you know, I would be lying if I wouldn't say that I'm nervous, or I'm considering what the reset button looks like for me personally in my life and for work. I've been here for 18 years and I love it. But at the same time, you know, you're not alone. Everybody is kind of feeling this. And I said that I was thinking this is probably the greatest economic lecture that we're all going to learn, of understanding how the economy works and how attached everything is. And it's also a good lesson for us to kind of go, where do I fit in this economy? You know, do I want to be like, I can see how Kaczynski and all those guys became off grid, right? Like they're like, yeah, man, I'm not attached to the economy at all, so it doesn't matter to me. I could totally see that mentality. So just know that you're not alone in this thinking, that we're all kind of considering what the next move is. So just hang in there, and hopefully it gets back to normal. But you know, there is going to be a new normal that we're going to have to adjust to.
Absolutely. Right on. Well said, Albert. I want to thank you once again for your time and clear expertise that you've shared with us today. It's, yeah, like I said, the hour flew by, and very, very engaging and interactive and well demonstrated presentation. So thank you very much. And thank you for your colleagues at Zoo for participating as well, because I know it was a team effort.
Take it easy, everybody.
Yeah, you bet. You too, Albert. And just a reminder to everybody, our next NSBA webinar series is taking place on Wednesday, April 29th. With Chris Fosnier of Complete Technologies, discussing your business and cybersecurity. So another very important and timely topic. So thanks, everybody, and we will see you soon. Thanks again, Al.
Take it easy.
You too.